Hello everyone, welcome to Hopeful Moments 1. Today, we're diving into an emotional story that highlights the unfairness of a child being forced to take on responsibilities that should never have been theirs. When a parent remarries, everything in the protagonist's life changes completely, not just their living environment, but also the way they are treated in their own home. Family bonds are torn apart. Clear favoritism in parenting leaves the protagonist feeling like an outsider, someone who exists only to fulfill the wishes of others. But is this truly the fate the protagonist must accept? Today's story isn't just about injustice, it's about the fight for freedom, the courage to stand up for oneself, and the journey to take back control of one's life. From being forced into submission, the protagonist finds a way to turn the tables, shifting from passive acceptance to actively shaping their own destiny. Bold decisions and unexpected twists will keep you captivated from start to finish. If you find this story meaningful, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to our channel so we can continue bringing you more valuable lessons. Thank you for being part of Hopeful Moments 1, where every story is a moment worth remembering. I, 17F, am about to graduate high school, a major milestone marking my transition into adulthood. This is not just the end of my school years but also the beginning of a new journey, where I will face countless challenges and opportunities on my path to university. Carefree days in the classroom, hours spent laughing with friends, are slowly fading into the past, making way for an open yet uncertain future. To preserve our precious memories before we all go our separate ways, my closest friends and I have planned an exciting trip. We want to make the most of our last summer before officially stepping into college life, and our ideal destination is a peaceful cabin surrounded by nature. No more stressful classes, no more family pressures or endless exams, just pure relaxation, joy, and unforgettable moments with the people who matter most. This isn't just an ordinary vacation, it's our chance to truly embrace our youth, to create memories that we can look back on with a smile no matter where life takes us. As we each begin our separate journeys, moments like these will become irreplaceable treasures, pieces of our youth that we will cherish forever. I started working as a babysitter at the age of 13, a challenging job that taught me invaluable life lessons. Taking care of children isn't just about playing with them or keeping an eye on them, it requires patience, responsibility, and the ability to think on your feet. There were days when I had to deal with energetic kids who refused to listen, or nights spent staying up late comforting a crying baby. But those experiences shaped me, helping me develop resilience, maturity, and strong time management skills, qualities that not everyone my age possesses. Beyond the practical experience, this job also allowed me to save up a significant amount of money, something I deeply appreciate. Thanks to years of hard work, I can now cover most of the expenses for our trip without relying too much on my family. This trip isn't just a vacation, it's the result of my dedication, a testament to everything I've worked for throughout my teenage years. That's why I feel incredibly proud and excited about this journey. It symbolizes not just the end of my school days but the beginning of an independent future, one where I can stand on my own, ready to face whatever lies ahead. When I was 15, my life unexpectedly took a completely different turn, one I never imagined and certainly never wanted. After my mother passed away, I was still struggling to cope with the loss, trying to adjust to a life where it was just my father and me. However, only a year and a half later, my father decided to remarry. That short period wasn't nearly enough for me to fully accept the fact that my mother was gone forever, let alone welcome a stranger into our lives as my stepmother. Things became even more complicated when she didn't come alone, she brought her 13-year-old daughter, Lily. Suddenly, I wasn't just sharing my home with a new stepmother, but also with a stepsister I had never asked for. I had never had a younger sibling before, nor did I feel the need for one, especially when I was being forced into a family dynamic that didn't feel natural to me. From the moment we moved in together, it was clear that my father and stepmother had one goal: they wanted Lily and me to become close sisters. They constantly pressured me to spend time with her, to take care of her, and to treat her as my real sister. They hoped that we would form a bond naturally, but what they failed to realize was that family relationships can't be forced, they must be built on genuine connection and mutual understanding. I simply couldn't fulfill their expectations, because I felt no emotional connection to Lily. I had nothing against her at first, but the way my father and stepmother kept pushing her onto me made me feel suffocated and resistant. Over time, I realized that my life was no longer my own. I was being forced into a role in a family I had never asked for. But their expectations didn't stop at wanting us to get along. They went a step further by making sure Lily and I did everything together, whether I wanted to or not. Every activity I used to enjoy, hanging out with friends, spending time alone to unwind, or even having personal space, was now overshadowed by their insistence that sisters should always be together. However, the real problem wasn't just that I was forced to be around Lily, it was who she was as a person. I quickly realized that Lily was far from an easygoing child. On the contrary, she was spoiled, selfish, and used to getting her way. If things didn't go exactly as she wanted, she would throw tantrums, scream, or cry until she got what she wanted. And the worst part? My stepmother always gave in. This meant that no matter how unreasonable Lily's behavior was, I was the one who had to accommodate her, because if I refused, I would ultimately be forced to comply anyway. One of the worst moments I ever experienced was on my 16th birthday. A day that was supposed to be mine, a special occasion where I could celebrate with my friends and family. But instead of allowing me to have my moment, my stepmother went out of her way to prepare a separate birthday cake for Lily, just so she wouldn't feel left out. It was as if my own birthday wasn't solely about me anymore, as if I had to share even that. But the worst was yet to come. Just as I was about to blow out the candles, Lily suddenly lunged forward and blew them all out before me, leaving me completely stunned. It wasn't an accident, it was a blatant act of theft, a declaration that even on my most special day, I wasn't allowed to have a single moment for myself. I was furious and complained, but instead of siding with me, my father scolded me. He casually said, "It's time to grow up. Being siblings means learning to share." His words felt like a slap to my face. Not only did he refuse to stand up for me, but he also completely dismissed the unfairness I was experiencing. In his eyes, I had no right to demand a birthday of my own, no right to be upset when Lily did something wrong, and no right to reject the relationship they were forcing upon me. In that moment, I realized that I was truly alone in my own home. A wave of anger surged through me so fiercely that I felt like I was about to explode. It wasn't just rage, it was deep heartbreak and betrayal. I had lost my mother, the only person in this world who truly understood and loved me unconditionally. I had lost my peace at home, forced to live every day with a stepmother I never cared for and a selfish girl I never wanted as my sister. And now, even my birthday, a day that was supposed to be mine, was no longer mine. It had been stolen, ruined so blatantly by my stepmother's unreasonable favoritism, Lily's selfishness, and, most of all, my father's blatant bias. I couldn't take it anymore. Without holding back, I looked my father straight in the eye and said firmly that I had no sister. My voice was sharp, unwavering, and without a hint of regret. I wasn't sure if Lily had fully processed what I said, but her reaction was instant. As if she had mastered the art of seeking attention, she started wailing and sobbing dramatically, as if I had deeply wounded her. But who was really the one hurt here? No one asked if I was okay. No one cared about my feelings. Instead, everyone turned to comfort Lily, acting as if I was the villain who had done something terrible. And just like that, my birthday party completely fell apart. I stood there, watching as Lily cried hysterically, my stepmother rushing to embrace her, while my father remained silent, offering no words of defense, no sign that he understood the pain I was enduring. In that moment, a realization struck me: I no longer belonged to this family. From that day on, an invisible wall formed between me and them. I withdrew, no longer wanting to join family activities, no longer wanting to talk to my father, and certainly having no intention of getting closer to Lily or my stepmother. Before, despite my dissatisfaction, I had tried to fit in, longing to be accepted and loved. But now, I understood, no matter how hard I tried, I would never have a normal life in this house. I was no longer a member of this family, I was just an outsider, forced to endure and make sacrifices while Lily could do whatever she wanted without ever facing consequences. Each passing day, I felt more suffocated and isolated. Family meals became something I just wanted to get over with. I began avoiding my father, no longer telling him about my school life or things I cared about like I used to. With my stepmother and Lily, I responded coldly and reluctantly whenever they tried to act friendly, an insincere facade I no longer had the patience for. I used to think that if I tried hard enough, things would change. But now, I understood, nothing would ever change. And I no longer wanted to change anything. I didn't want to try fitting into a family that I had never truly belonged to. I just wanted to escape this place as soon as possible. Not only was I forced to see Lily as my sister, but I was also treated as her babysitter against my will. Even though I had never agreed to this role, it was forced upon me as if it were a given. Whenever I made plans to go out with friends or simply wanted some time to myself, my father and stepmother would push Lily onto me, as if taking care of her was my natural responsibility. There was no other choice, either I took Lily with me, or I wasn't allowed to go at all. If I refused or made it clear that I didn't want her tagging along, their responses were always some form of guilt-tripping or outright pressure. If you won't take Lily with you, then stay home and watch her. You're so selfish, why can't you spend time with your little sister? Your mother is gone. You should learn to bond with your new family. But this wasn't my family, and Lily wasn't my sister. I couldn't do anything without being tied down by Lily. Whether it was watching a movie, going bowling, or even just taking a walk, she always had to be there, whether I wanted her to or not. And if I refused, they would keep me at home to babysit her, simply because they either didn't want to take care of her themselves or couldn't be bothered. This injustice made me feel more like a servant than a family member. I had no control over my own life, no freedom to do the things that a normal teenager should be able to enjoy. I wasn't myself anymore, I was just a shadow in this house, always forced to put others' needs before my own. Imagine everything I've told you about Lily, her spoiled, selfish, tantrum-throwing ways, but now, place it in the life of a 15 to 17-year-old like me. It wasn't just inconvenient, it was suffocating. I wasn't the one who gave birth to or raised Lily, yet I was the one being treated like I had to take responsibility for her. One of the worst memories I have was when I was forced to take Lily bowling. It was supposed to be a fun night, a chance for me to relax and enjoy some time for myself, but it quickly turned into a nightmare. The moment we arrived, Lily refused to stay put, constantly reaching into the ball return area despite how dangerous it was and despite my repeated warnings. Not only that, but she ran straight down the bowling lane, making me panic as I rushed to pull her back. The staff and other players started staring, and I felt utterly humiliated. People looked at me like I was responsible for her behavior, even though I never wanted to bring her in the first place. In the end, I had no choice but to take her home, which meant my night was completely ruined. Instead of enjoying a fun outing with friends, I was stuck babysitting a reckless child, just because my father and stepmother didn't want to do it themselves. The worst part? This wasn't a one-time thing. It happened over and over again. I was constantly forced to cancel my plans, my personal time stolen away, and every time I protested, they ignored me like my feelings didn't matter. They didn't care that I was also a teenager, that I had the right to enjoy my youth. To them, I was nothing more than a free babysitter, someone they could dump Lily onto whenever it was inconvenient for them. And the thing that breaks my heart the most is that no one listens to me. I can't talk to my dad because he always takes my stepmother and Lily's side. No matter how many times I complain, he always brushes it off as if I'm just overreacting. I feel alone, trapped in a family I never chose, treated unfairly at every turn. I tried to keep this trip a secret as much as possible because I knew that the moment Lily found out about it, everything would become a mess. I didn't want to argue, nor did I want to be forced to bring along a troublesome shadow on my last vacation before college. This was the time I had been looking forward to enjoy my freedom, to have fun with my friends without worrying about the responsibility of babysitting Lily like some reluctant nanny. However, no matter how careful I was, she still found out. That day, I was in my room, on the phone with my friends, discussing our trip while eating pizza and listening to music to relax. I had no idea that I wasn't alone. While I was laughing excitedly, making plans for a summer full of promise, Lily had snuck into my room and was hiding in my closet, eavesdropping on the entire conversation. I only realized she was there when she suddenly burst out of the closet, jumping out like a ghost. In that moment, I was so startled that I almost dropped my phone. She looked at me with excitement and immediately asked if she could come along, as if it was the most natural thing in the world, as if the trip automatically included her. I was beyond annoyed but tried to stay calm and firmly said, "No," while telling her to get out of my room immediately. I knew that if I gave in even a little, she would use it against me and make a scene, and then my dad and stepmother would force me to take her. But just as I feared, she immediately stomped her foot, pouting, her face turning red as if she was about to cry. She didn't even argue with me, she just stormed out of my room like a hurricane, running straight to my dad and stepmother to tattle. I sighed, feeling both angry and helpless. I had done everything I could to avoid this situation, yet Lily always found a way to insert herself into my life. When I told my friends what had happened, they were horrified and begged me not to let her come. They had met Lily before and knew exactly how she would ruin the trip. Some of them even threatened to cancel the trip altogether if I had to bring her along because no one wanted to deal with a spoiled, selfish brat for almost 3 weeks. At that moment, I was more certain than ever, I couldn't let this happen. No matter what my dad said, I wouldn't give in. This trip belonged to me and my friends, not Lily. Things escalated faster than I expected. My dad called me downstairs, and the moment I stepped into the living room, I knew I was about to face an unavoidable argument. He looked at me and gently asked if Lily could come, saying that she also needed a vacation, as if that was a reasonable excuse to force me to take her. I was already used to my dad always siding with Lily, but this time, I couldn't hold back anymore. I told him straight up that I would not take her, no beating around the bush, no attempts to compromise. This was my trip with my friends, not a family vacation, and I couldn't stand having to watch over Lily for nearly 3 weeks. If they wanted her to go on a trip, they could take her themselves, but I would not be responsible for her for even 1 more second. Immediately, my stepmother jumped in, her voice full of anger and reproach. She called me selfish, saying that I only thought about myself and didn't care about Lily's feelings. But what shocked me the most was when she threatened that if Lily didn't go, then I wouldn't be allowed to go either, because my dad was paying for part of the trip. That sentence hit me like a bucket of cold water, so in the end, they thought they could use money to force me to do what they wanted. I couldn't take it anymore. I snapped back immediately, telling her that she had no right to decide this because she wasn't my mother. I had held back for so long, but this time, I had to say what I had been feeling for years: stop forcing me to take care of her daughter because she was the one who turned her into this. Lily reacted instantly. She didn't cry like usual, she screamed in my face, yelling that I was a terrible sister, that I never wanted to spend time with her. I lost all patience, and for the first time, I felt no sympathy for her at all. I looked straight into her eyes and said clearly, "You're right, I don't want to." That sentence was like a dagger to Lily's pride. Her face turned pale, and she stood frozen for a moment before bursting into tears as if I had done something horribly cruel. She ran away dramatically, expecting someone to take her side and defend her like always. My dad sighed, but instead of realizing the real problem, he just shook his head in disappointment. He turned to me, his voice cold, and gave me an ultimatum. "If you don't take Lily, then I won't pay for your trip." I had been expecting this. I knew my dad would always choose Lily and my stepmother over me, but at this point, I had nothing left to lose. I looked him straight in the eye and said, calmly but with absolute determination, "If you do that, I will never forgive you. And I will never speak to you again." The room fell into an eerie silence. My dad stared at me, as if he couldn't believe I had the guts to say that. But I didn't regret it at all. I had been pushed around long enough, and this time, I wouldn't let them control my life anymore. Finally, my dad ended the argument with a dismissive remark. "You're overreacting. Lily isn't as bad as you think." I just gave a bitter laugh. I had heard that line too many times. It didn't matter whether Lily was bad or not, what mattered was that I was done putting up with her. I would decide my own life, and I wouldn't let anyone force me into anything ever again. At this point, there was nothing left to hold me back. I quietly returned to my room, my heart pounding with anger, but I knew what I had to do. I opened my closet, grabbed my suitcase, and started packing. Every item I placed in my bag was a statement. I would not let them control me anymore. I left the house without looking back and went straight to my aunt's, my mother's sister. She was the only person in the family I trusted, and I knew she would understand me. When I arrived, my aunt opened the door, saw my tense face and my suitcase, and didn't ask many questions. She just pulled me into a hug, as if she had already predicted this would happen. I sat down and told her everything, from the years I was forced to take care of Lily, to how my father always sided with her instead of me, and the unfair ultimatum he had just given me. She listened without interrupting, but I could see her eyes growing sharper, filled with anger. When I got to the part where my father refused to pay for my trip, she let out a deep sigh before saying something that nearly made me cry with relief. "I'll cover the money your father took away." I froze for a moment, unable to believe that I still had such a solid support system. I hugged her tightly, unable to put my gratitude into words. But she didn't stop there. She looked at me, her voice firm yet full of care. "And when you go to university, you can live with me. No one can force you to stay in that kind of environment anymore." Those words felt like a door opening to the freedom I had been waiting for. I was no longer trapped in the role of an unwilling older sister, no longer treated like a free babysitter for Lily. I had the right to take control of my own life. I called my father, not to apologize, but to tell him my decision. "I'm staying with Aunt. I'm going on this trip, and after that, I'm never coming back to that house again." My father exploded instantly, his voice filled with anger and disappointment. He didn't try to persuade me to return, didn't ask if I was okay. Instead, he just insulted me, as if I were an ungrateful child who had betrayed him. "You're a spoiled brat. Who do you think your family is? Your family is me, my wife, and my daughter, not that old hag." His words stunned me for a few seconds. My family? Did he really expect me to accept a family that never treated me like a real member? A family where I was nothing more than an unpaid babysitter for his daughter? I let out a cold laugh, no longer feeling hurt, just disappointed and relieved at the same time. "No, you're wrong. My family is the people who truly love me. And you're no longer part of it." I hung up the phone, took a deep breath, and felt freer than ever. For the first time in years, I finally had control over my own choices. As far as I knew, Lily didn't have any developmental or psychological disorders. She had been taken to doctors and therapy sessions before, but there was never any diagnosis indicating she had a condition. This meant that her behavior wasn't due to any inherent issue, it was entirely the result of being spoiled beyond reason. She had learned that as long as she threw a big enough tantrum, she would always get her way. I realized this from the first time I met her. Our group had agreed to eat Mexican food, a decision made after discussing and reaching a consensus. But Lily didn't like it. Instead of accepting the group's choice or politely suggesting an alternative, she started screaming, crying, and throwing a fit for 10 whole minutes in the car, making the entire atmosphere tense and unbearable. I thought her mother would step in, calm her down, and teach her to respect group decisions. But no, her mother immediately gave in, changing the restaurant just to appease Lily. I couldn't believe that a 13-year-old could manipulate an entire group of people just by throwing a tantrum. This showed me that Lily had used this tactic many times before, and her mother had completely enabled it instead of teaching her how to behave properly. What frustrated me even more was that as soon as she got what she wanted, Lily instantly stopped crying, pulled out her phone, and started texting, acting as if nothing had happened. No words of thanks, no guilt for making everyone uncomfortable. She had simply switched from rage to indifference, like flipping a switch, proving that her outbursts were nothing more than a manipulation tool. If Lily had a genuine psychological or behavioral disorder, I might have been more understanding. But it was clear that she had full control over her actions, she just didn't care. She was too used to always getting her way. And because of that, I didn't deserve to be forced into being her guardian every waking moment. I wasn't her mother, I wasn't her babysitter, and I certainly wasn't responsible for fixing the consequences of her mother's poor parenting. Through all of this, I came to understand that family isn't just about blood ties or living under the same roof, it's about mutual respect, love, and understanding. A true family cannot be built on force, favoritism, or obligation, it must be based on empathy and willingness. I also realized that setting boundaries is incredibly important, even with family. No one has the right to impose responsibilities on you that aren't yours or force you to sacrifice your personal life for their benefit. If you're constantly treated unfairly, speaking up and seeking support from those who truly care about you is essential. Most importantly, I learned that freedom and the right to live on my own terms are things no one can take away from me, as long as I'm willing to fight for them. Everyone deserves to choose their own path, and sometimes, achieving fairness means standing up for yourself, even if it creates distance between you and certain people. After all, a family that doesn't appreciate you isn't a family worth holding on to. In life, we won't always be treated fairly or receive love from those who should care for us. But what truly matters is that we have the right to choose how we live, rather than letting others decide for us. Remember, setting boundaries doesn't mean you're selfish, it means you're protecting yourself from negativity. You don't have to please everyone, especially if it comes at the cost of losing yourself. Sometimes, walking away from toxic relationships, even if they're family, is the best way to find real peace and happiness. Above all, believe in your own worth. You deserve a life where you are respected, loved, and free to pursue what truly makes you happy. Don't be afraid to stand up for what's right, because only when you fight for yourself do you truly take control of your life.